I got way more than I bargained for. So, to celebrate the early lottery I've won in my life, I'm gonna talk your ear off on what I've learned playing the Gundam Breaker 4 beta. Not mine, that sums it up. All I got is navigating menus and common anime phrases, so I can't talk about stats here. Not that it'd be easy to test, as I'll get into later. Let's just ignore that part. Ooh, credentials. Starting with movement, most of your actions are still here. Guard and sidestep is now mapped to circle by default, to make room for the new option weapon palette. The first thing I tested is animation cancelling, because I'm a nerd. Jumping and stepping seem to work fine, but boosting out of an attack doesn't feel as fast as 3. But your boost bar is way longer, especially at level 1. So traveling large distances isn't as annoying as in previous games, where you had to constantly stop to recharge. The recharge is much slower relative to the bar size though. Newly added is the quick drop, done by tapping boost or jump in midair. I keep forgetting it exists despite being in the dev stream. I'm too used to letting gravity do the work. And it's probably the zoomed in camera, but the walking does feel faster than Breaker 3. You're better off boosting like I mentioned though. But what I consider to be the meat of Breaker's gameplay, the melee, has been overhauled. Well, the melee weapon movesets I guess. Close enough. From my testing, one-handing is dead. All you get is this stupid dash if you attack with your unarmed hand. You can probably cheese some use out of it, but you're gonna want to dual wield if you want full access to your melee moveset. And you can't unequip both weapons to turn into unarmed. We're not at Breaker 1 and 2 anymore. Or Rubicon. Stop me if you heard this one. Tap one button to do an attack string of up to 6 hits, which you can end at any time by pressing the other button. Depending on how many hits you've done with the first button, it will change the finishing move done by the other button. Any guesses? That's right! It's the two-handed sword for Breaker 2 and 3, and every single melee weapon from Breaker 1! It's also used in every single Warriors game, besides the fighting game one. So yeah, it's Warriors combo system. Each hand, mapped to square and triangle respectively, holds a weapon, and you can start a melee string with either hand. By attacking with the other hand, you will end the combo with a finisher. So you essentially have 2 halves of a warrior moveset, with a caveat that using the light string of one hand forces you to use the finishers of the other hand. Which means that if you want to use the sword attack string, but use the sword's finishers as well, you need to dual wield swords. Side effect of doing that is starting a melee string with either hand makes no difference when you're using 2 of the same weapon type, which is a little boring, but practical. The fun comes from mixing the weapon types. Since the beta only gives us 2 main weapon types, the go-to synergy for dual wielding is to have the quick saber combo as your light attack string, while reserving the slow axis either combo finishers or for the returning point-blank uppercut. Yeah, they have special input for the weapons too. By holding the weapon button, the saber gets a basic knockback sweep to end combos single-handedly. Or the classic insta-uppercut by holding forward and attack. The double uppercut is in Sword's C2 finisher, by the way. Axe just has the charge upper. Axe is still sluggish, but the new system has really made me warm up on it. The C5 with its smoke effect just gives me so much dopamine. Before I forget, the C5, C2, C, yeah, the whole thing, those are Warriors terms. C5 is 4 hits and then the finisher button. C2 is 1 hit and the finisher button. From my testing, the special hold inputs for Saber work even when you're in the light string of the other hand. I could uppercut with my left katana during my right saber string, for example. But I can't get a clean cancel for the Axis charge unless you're using the Axis combo string. As a result of this new system, dual sabers as they worked in previous games are gone. Carrying 2 sabers is effectively the same as having 2 one-handed saber movesets. No dual sword dance in sight. Though I don't see how they wouldn't add something like knives to replace the old dual saber moveset, as sub-weapon types are still in the form of Goose Falchion having the katana moveset. Oh, look at him go! It functions similarly to sabers, but it has unique attack animations, a full light string, different hold input, and even some unique finishers. For warrior standards, at least like the old ones. That's a unique moveset. I'd use it a lot more if it didn't take until the end of the first day to drop a high level variant of. Should've farmed the goose. And I didn't get any other melee weapon type, which is a shame as a twin blade and whip main. Not for a lack of trying. I smacked a dozen unicorns and the lance never fell out of any of them. Must be a demo lock. The mid-air string works like the grounded one, but it's shorter, capping at 4 hits instead of 6. Another reason not to use the katana, it doesn't have the ground slam finisher. Both Saber and Axe have it as a C3 finisher, 2 hits and finisher, while Katana's version doesn't take you down. Again, I keep forgetting there's a magnetize to floor button they also conveniently added. I would also note that the melee weapons I got list their moveset with a Roman 1 at the end, implying that the better/longer movesets of Breaker 3 will at least drop with higher level weapons. The ranged weapons are also pretty sparse in the beta, rifles and machine guns. Like before, there are some variations between how they fire, and they seem to be weapon specific. My goodness. The GM spray gun always fires in bursts, for example, even when charged, while News Rifle has the burst shot, but the hold input fires rockets instead of charging the normal shot. No more nonsense like a TBR that only fires normal shots, I hope. The ability to dual wield doesn't change how these things work other than some possible nerf. Charge shots charge feels longer. So, what do you do with 2 guns in an otherwise melee focused game? Bang, 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 bang. Honestly, the default MGs felt unusable outside of farming hits for your combo bar. They don't cause flinching or reduce the stamina bar as fast as my go-to gather road setup. Of course, shooting mode is still here, but the beta doesn't have the weapons that will typically benefit from shooting mode. I fought so many enemies with bazookas, give me one! So, back to Gunslinger I go. I only got 1 TBR in my time, and boy does it not hold up to spray and pray. I'd wait for the full game before casting judgment on shooting mode, but so far I can't hit anything to save my life. I miss my splash spam. EX attacks and option weapons function closer to each other now. A bunch of options like bits and jewel swords. Yeah, you're very, very clever. Have been rolled into EXs. Big problem I have with the beta is the generic EX offerings. You get 1. The heal. Ground Shaker better be in a full game. There's like 2 EX moves I'd consider worthwhile EX melee, and they both belong to G-Self. Beam Saber and Double Torque Punch. EXs now run off of a shared meter system, which means you can stockpile your bar for use in a pinch. Or to have permanent uptime for super modes and remote weapons, oh boy. The power-ups seem pretty handy. I didn't test the difference much, it does affect damage too, but with all the warriors talk, faster attack speed should help. Yeah, 3 is a bit expensive though. Like that's all you're gonna be using for EXs, if you want permanent uptime. Has the Vesper always paralyzed things? Does that even fit the lore? As for the bits, the extra functions of stuff like News Barrier is still available. The input becomes a toggle after you deploy the funnels, and you can pocket the bits before it runs out of charge. Though you have little reason to do so, it doesn't refund the EX cost. Full Armor Unicorn's shield bits also have a good amount of option-like functional nonsense that again, blurs the line between EX and options. Now for the other plate, options. On top of sharing the same palette style as EXs, you can scroll between 2 palettes for 8 options total. Unlike previous games, each weapon doesn't have its own charge. Instead, it has a universal cooldown that locks out all options when you use one, but the cooldown time is dependent on the weapon. From what I've heard, this is one of the most controversial changes in the game. So, the good news! Melee options have barely been nerfed in terms of uptime. The cooldown for these things is practically the lowest an option can have, so spamming them is feasible. I guess 2 seconds is technically a nerf. Most of the melee options here are saber combos, but using the builder's parts, you can have strikes, Schwertgewehr, sword weapon, as a 2-handed sword. You can still combo with it, you just have to hold R1 while tapping the button. It always ends with the uppercut, but you can skip to it by holding the input. Aerial Schwartz works similarly, tap up to uppercut, skip to holding the input. And the ether roll still in the game. Not that ether, that one. That one came first. Swords kind of work the same way. Tap for combo, hold for uppercut. It's the ground slam! Shield weapons also have been lumped into options, and the one I found, the Ground Gundam, does a full combo from a single press. The new Gundam allows you to hold fire for the beam shooter thing. Back to melee, the Zaku Spike also auto combos, just one tap and you go through the full combo, you're just stuck there. For ranged, this is where the nerfs come in. Grenades, bombs, upwards of 10 seconds! Even the Vulcan costs 5. I mean, I like having occasional burst options on cooldown. But for the option spammer builds, ranged weapons are practically dead. But yeah, I'm the type of guy that just keeps forgetting I have options unless it's like Destiny Finger or something. But aside from that massive nerf, I don't think any of the options have been cut or anything. I mean, they kept this. You know why it's called the Wing Zero? Because it serves zero purpose. It's always nice to have the jank. A quick peek to builder's parts here. You can still stack parts like bits or those missile pods, and pull them all into one button. However, the more you stack, the more they'll cost. In options case, longer cooldowns. I don't know if Gundam Breaker 3 had any prevention or counterbalancing to this kind of weapon stacking, but this game has it. And yeah, the full armor unicorn shield funnels get stronger if you use all of its parts, like the ones with the shield funnels on them. But it doesn't show the same way the shield mist does. Freaking annoying. Might be just a builder's parts thing. Now, getting into the things you're fighting. The beta doesn't offer much, just 3 quests and non-story stages at the start of the game. Only one NPC partner too, the guy with the SD. You do not get SD parts in this demo. It's mostly just enemy rooms / hallways mixed in with mini-bosses. Busting mooks is loads of fun. It feels mashier than Breaker 2 and 3 due to the longer combo strings, but hey, just pretend this is Gundam Warriors and you might feel better. For better and for worse, the mooks are less aggressive than previous games. Even playing on hardcore, I haven't had sniper stun locks or mooks interrupting me at inconvenient times, so they're less rewarding to kill, but also less frustrating. I can't exactly put it into words because I've never played New Gundam Breaker, so the perspective of me just going from 3 to 4 is just, yeah, it's more business as usual, but it's... Compared to New Breaker, I did not deserve to get this demo. I did not suffer the same way as the people who paid full price for that thing. It doesn't exactly feel the same as Breaker 3, but it is a return to form in terms of combos, speed, and responsiveness, so everyone wins. Especially the Warriors people. I'm half joking, I know the appeal of Warriors is closer to EX Versus in terms of character accuracy instead of like the whole do what you want thing that Gundam Breaker does. The combo bar exists. It gives you buffs that I don't feel like reading, but it's not that difficult to keep up as long as you stay on the offensive. It doesn't immediately zero out if you let the bar empty, it just rolls back to the previous levels. The game deviates even more from Breaker 3 when fighting the mini-bosses though. The stagger bar is still there, but it works like Breaker 2's. Bosses are unflinching when the bar is full, in 3 you can slightly flinch them, even if the stagger bar isn't empty. And once it's empty, you can knock them around. However, there isn't an extended combo state for you to ragdoll the boss around as punishment. Sort of. Basically, once you knock them down once, the moment you let them recover, and you stop hitting them, they'll be back with a full stagger bar. But it feels inconsistent how long they'll be in that knocked back state. And speaking of recovery, that get up animation has iframes? God, it feels bad when they iframe through your charge finisher. Or you know, your charge axe. The vulnerable state lasts a while if you don't knock them back, but they can still attack you during it. So unlike 3, and 2 to an extent, they don't transform into sandbags once their bar empties. Or at least, you have to earn that sandbagging by keeping up the offense. Gundam Breaker 3 compensated for its long vulnerable state by making the enemies way more spongy, and the stagger bar takes much longer to empty. But you know how much they tip the scale in the other direction? The stagger bar goes down way faster. So now you have to put more thought in beating up this staggered enemy with extensions like because dropping your combo has you start over, even if stagger takes way faster. Bosses are still pretty aggressive, so they can still interrupt you if you're not paying attention. Oh, and ground strikes are still a thing, and like Breaker 2, it doesn't insta-kill bosses. So while the mooks are full sandbags, the bosses do put up a challenge that goes beyond chip them until they let you flinch them. Unless you're playing on normal, or have on-level gear. In that case, nothing puts up a fight. I was about to reveal how bits are busted since they can help you keep up the knockdown juggle state, only to realize that it happens too inconsistently to be relied on, and might even end your juggle earlier than it should. I'm holding off on calling it busted, but the arcade is still in this game. That's the one to watch out for. It's still fun to crush enemies with your now longer combos, even with the limited options the beta offers. But anyone unfamiliar with the Breaker series shouldn't expect a super hardcore punishing experience playing this. I'm playing hard just so I can get some combos in. You know, in case the lower accurate kill bind doesn't make it obvious enough. I will say, if there's one thing that feels like a downgrade, it's the hit animations. The ones in this game feel more stiff than previous games. The enemies don't get knocked back or stagger the same way, especially when they're standing. You can see the enemies stumble back sometimes in 3, while here they always slide back, unless they're knocked down. Not to mention the spinning launch, it was so jank! I miss it! One thing I forgot to mention, it's more relevant here, healing repair kits are gone. The good news is, the damage from enemies even in hardcore doesn't get as drastic as 3's gets. Though that might be because we're in the early game. I barely needed healing throughout my playtime, even when under-leveled. I guess that makes Gundam Breaker 4 easier than 3, but I'm open to the idea of the game being balanced around the player not having 20 instant pocket heals. At least only having the EX heal would eat away at your other EX actions. Breaker vets might notice I'm ignoring an important mechanic. You are extremely sleepy in this beta, in that you can't awaken. That's the burst mode for people who aren't familiar. I'm pretty sure this beta is set at the beginning of the game's story, and since they don't let you play the story missions, you can progress and get sunlocks, like builder's parts. Awaken has always been unlocked with a level of gravitas through the story in Breaker, so you can have your big hero story moment when there's no story to play. The beta has a giant boss, a very big horse. I would say it's not punishing enough considering how easy the attacks are to dodge, especially compared to previous games. But it's the early game, how to get the players warmed up. However, the rage phase it has is amazing. All its attacks become so much faster, you can't just take 5 seconds to react to the telegraph. The perfect great bosses in previous games were always a slog at best, so I'd say everything Gundam Breaker 4 is doing here is an improvement, I think. Having a big arena and boost bar does a lot to help you work around the size. The tells do make it too easy, but again, early boss. Imagine if it raged all the time the post-game difficulties. But again, being leveled lets you level the boss quick. You can hit it during the power-up animation, as the boss doesn't have a loudspeaker that lets it monologue for 3 minutes while powering up. Rest in peace, Toriyama. This video is mostly about the break, but I guess I should spare some time for the build aspect as well. Once again, I can't read! But I'll do what I can. Pods have uniform stats.
Please clap.
The ability upgrades are all percent-based, and they have uniform levels, instead of variable numbers like in 3. But when is 1% durability gonna be worth anything? I guess you'd have to stack them with multiple parts. However, the beta imposes a massive limitation. No merges, which means no leveling up existing parts, no fusing parts for abilities, and no Digivolution merges. As an aside, the shop is unavailable in the demo, so all we had was the 3 stages to farm parts from. So, while the full game most likely will let us fuse and create our ultimate fashion frame, the beta enforces the tyranny of the ancestral Breaker 1 lifestyle. At least this game lets you do the armored core thing by letting you carry over your current paint job when you're about to equip a part, assuming the color has been changed already. But what do we have? Well, I'm gonna start with the paint section to clarify something from the trailer. The decals are easier to move. Also, paint all with the same color has been replaced with a more intuitive highlight and paint option. Everything you could do in Gundam Breaker 3 seems to work here too, so yeah. I didn't notice that beam glow colors are a thing now, so I rushed to get footage of that in the next time slot. You fool! My OC has been trained in the Jedi arts by Count Dooku! Sorry. On to the part customs. You might think I'd have nothing to say since I'm illiterate, but I do have something. Builder's parts. The plain ones don't improve stats anymore, by the looks of it. You can move them, you can juke them, you can scale and rotate them. You can do set transformations to the shield. And the backpack. And the arms. And the head. And the... Okay, body and leg can be rotated, but you can make them tiny. And body can be shifted. So, to one-up the previous game's customization, you can spit on the pre-established scaling of these Gunpla and make your own nonsense. With my limited brain power, I opted to make something I can't have in the beta, an SD. Me and Michael. Yes, you can do something smart with it, like adjusting arm size to make it symmetrical with each other. But we all know it for the dice roll of builds. This is a big feature and it's probably in everyone's videos by now. But it's all I got for this screen. The rest you could already glean from the dev stream. 8 builder slots, training room, and the rest is carried from previous games. I can't name a part that's new from this game, or even something from Gupgo, or Gundam Breaker Mobile. Still, the player card system shows more returning parts that you can't get in the beta, like Bile, if it's custom, plenty of 00, H, Wing, the Yaku J, and SDs. Hello there, Tao. What you got there, Tao? Shoutouts to this 00 themed NPC. She really understood the assignment from the arm split. Oh, and photo. I don't think diorama mode's here, so all you get is the old photo mode. At least the poses are named. I can't say much performance-wise, but the combat runs well on a PS4 Fat. The only time it gets laggy is weirdly in the liftoff sequence. Parts and paints take a second to load, though. Oh boy. I stopped playing Breaker 3 because I don't want to scroll through this menu any longer, and now this game barges in with 1500 parts per category. I didn't spend much time in the config menu. The only options I ran into are the slow-mo and powerful hit, which is meant to replicate the slow-mo and break of previous games, but it feels less smooth than 2 and 3. Not to mention so many attacks activated, and with the stiffer hit animations, it doesn't bring out the dopamine in the same way. It's off by default, and I think it should stay that way. The other option I ran into? Button remaps. I didn't experiment with this much, but the EX option panels are mapped independently of your other actions, so that's a good sign. Oh, R1 plus R2 implant there are shields with possible extra function somewhere that isn't lumped into the option weapons, but I didn't find any that could do that. Well, that's all I got. You know what I'm thinking about right now? The Valkyria Chronicles equivalent of New Gundam Breaker. But really, does only having a morsel actually make you hungrier than not eating at all? Because metaphorically, that's what this beta does to me. What Gundam Breaker has over other action RPGs is its roster and variety, but also the ability to play favorites with anything. It's in the marketing of this game, the whole My Gunpla thing. So a demo like this misses the main appeal of the game, because if you only look at the gameplay, Breaker is pretty damn simple. I mean, hallways interrupted by mini-bosses ending in a boss. Describes Breaker 3 pretty well. Even if the combat is flashy and responsive, there isn't much meat to it. The RPG elements is what gives it longevity, along with its sheer amount of options. The beta gives me the gameplay, but not enough of it due to the lacking weapon types, and a lack of customization and upgrade options prevents me from getting truly attached to each build, since I can't make it look the way I want it to, and with the options I want. Also, I can't go full fashion because, well, we're on a timer, 2 hours per time slot. These things can take a long time if you want to perfect them. I did get a nice UC Gundam build going, but it's more function than form. I love the RX-79. To be fair, what's here is a good sign of the full game's quality. Uniform stats with ability drops just like 3, fast-paced combat that isn't a complete retread of 2 and 3, expanded building options, functional builder's parts. There's no big red flag that contradicts the idea that this game is building on what 3 established. But it just makes me want more. Which means the beta is doing its job. It got me more excited for the full game. Ignoring the fact that I'm dead tired from making this video. I played 5 out of 6 hours of the first day. The pressure of getting this thing out in a timely manner is stressing me out a little too much. This has been Rutiel, you know what the buns do. It's time for me to ignore the game again until the next trailer comes out. Give me a release date, please.